And you're recording. Good.
No sign of Marlene yet?
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
All right, we're all set.
Hey, there we go. Hey, Marlene, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Okay, we're going to be, we've got Fallon Silcox, one of our reporters here who's done some education reporting lately, and a teacher, former teacher, Leah, is it Sarsfield? Or
Yes, Sarsfield.
Sarsfield. Okay. If you're ready, Roy?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
All right. Hi, this is Rick Elmhorst, along with Roy DeJesus, and thank you so much for listening to or watching this edition of To the Point Already. Roy, this week we're talking about education issues, specifically in Hillsborough County. We're looking at a couple of different things here. First is the state of struggling schools in Hillsborough County and the efforts by the county to turn around those schools. They've had many iterations of trying to turn around schools in just about every district. We're going to be looking at Hillsborough County. And also, we've heard about the Great Resignation. Well, how about the Great Teacher Resignation? A lot more teachers have resigned or are planning to resign after having gone through the pandemic.
Yeah, and Hillsborough is a very interesting case because it is the biggest school district in Tampa Bay. They have a whole bunch of issues to deal with. Not only the teacher staffing issue, we've reported on the failing schools and how to turn those around. There's issues with the budget, and that being probably a major issue that has its hands on everything. Because if you can't pay a teacher what they're deserved, then they're going to leave. And if you don't have the resources to teach the students what they should know, then they're not going to do well in school. So we have a great panel here to weigh in.
Yeah, we've got Marlene Sokol, who is a writer, an education writer for the Tampa Bay Times.
Big fan.
Recently read several of her stories, and they were amazingly well done. A lot of great information. One of our own reporters, Fallon Silcox, who has recently done several stories about resigning teachers, and one of those teachers who resigned, Leah Sarsfield, is joining us. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us on To the Point Already.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
I want to start off with Marlene. You've been covering education for quite a few years. If anybody outside of the academic world knows what's going on, particularly, I guess, in Hillsborough County, it would be you. The story that you had said that there are 45 schools in Hillsborough County that are part of this transformation effort, and Hillsborough County has the largest number of schools in the state that are like long-term low-performing schools. Well, Hillsborough County is one of the biggest districts in the state. They've got a lot of schools. I'm not sure if it's fair to say they're number one, but it's still not a great thing to be number one in.
Well, yeah, and we have more, I'm sorry to interrupt, we have more low-performing schools than Miami-Dade, which is much bigger, about twice the size, or Broward County. So we have, for quite a few years, had a disproportionate number of schools on the persistently low-performing list and on the lowest reading list. There's a lot of overlap there, but so even for our large size, we have more.
When you say a low-performing school, what does that mean?
That's a state definition that has to do with how many times over the past 5 years your school has either been a D or an F. So if you raise it up to a C and it remains a C for several years, you can get off that list. The reason they designed it that way is because the way the formulas work, if you start at a very low level and then you improve, so you get points for improving. So
What kind of metrics do they look at to say you're a low performing school?
It's based on the test, the FSA test, which this is the last year that that's being given. They're going to transition to something else, but so it's based on the same test that everybody takes. And then there are other elements for high school that are added into it, but we're dealing primarily with elementary and middle schools, and so that's the FSA test in reading, math, science, writing, that type of thing.
You've done an in-depth look at the metrics for all of these schools. Give us a couple of examples of schools that just long-term, they've been failing schools.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds, I don't want to single out a school, but the ones that have been on the list for a long time, James, which I hate to pick on James because James, they're actually doing some great things right now under new leadership, but that school has struggled with F's for a long time. Robles, and reason I will single out Robles because back when they first started assigning letter grades to schools, and this would have been like 25 years ago, Robles was one of the first schools in the entire state to get an F. Robles right now is a D. So those are two schools that have been struck. Sulphur Springs, which is in a community that is well known for having a lot of pretty severe poverty, and Sulphur Springs generally goes back and forth from a D to an F. So those are three that have consistently, they've struggled.
One of the things that I saw reported in your stories was in these struggling schools, man, that's a hard job. It's stressful. They have a big turnover of principals. Part of it may be just the stress of being a principal at this school, and you're like, okay, I tried my best. I'm out of here. It could be that the administration looks at the principal and goes, yeah, we can do better than you. You're not doing the job. We're going to replace you. You get a big turnover of teachers in these schools as well. And this is where I want to bring in Fallon Silcox. We've heard about the Great Resignation. During the pandemic, a lot of people looked at their lives and thought, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I quit. A lot of teachers are doing that as well, right?
And let me just add real quick that Fallon worked on a series this week. I've been lucky enough to be the one introducing her stories all week, and it's just phenomenal reporting on that end, Fallon. And you really looked at the whole of the issue here. You looked at the teachers leaving, the teachers staying, and then what happens to the student when the teachers leave. So tell us a little bit about that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, originally the story started as just, hey, we know a lot of teachers are leaving. There's this movement across the country, the Great Resignation for teachers. So I put a post up on Facebook. One of the teaching groups here, I have my phone here actually. I left it up because the response I got was incredible. It's the Adopt a Hillsborough Teacher Facebook group. And I got over 256 comments.
Wow.
Teachers when I said, hey, I'm a reporter. Anyone out there know of a teacher who's looking to change careers or has changed careers recently? 256 comments. That doesn't even include the private messages I got, the emails I received. I mean, it was huge. I had to turn comments off and put a new post like, hey guys, I'm good. Because I got such a huge response. And a lot of these teachers were saying either they had quit and they had changed careers or
What's a common theme for the teachers who are like, I'm getting out?
A lot of them say it comes back to just kind of an overall lack of support they feel from the district. They love their students, they love working with the kids, but they admit things have changed in the classroom, and it seems to be since everyone came back to school after the pandemic. But they say the pay, they just don't have anything to work towards at this point. The hours they're having to put in now, and just the level of emotional um, the emotional support they have to provide too, they say, is more than ever before. And these are from teachers, like I said, some of them 15, 17 years teaching. And they just are say we can't do it, enough is enough. And that's actually how I met Leah, who's on with us today as well. She decided to make that change over the summer. And we shared her story, which was pretty interesting to hear from her as well and kind of get her take on things.
All right, let's bring in Leah. Leah, where were you teaching? How long had you been teaching? And what were you teaching? And why did you decide to change careers?
Yeah, so I taught for 6 years. I have experience in both charter schools and public schools. My most recent school that I worked at was Brooker Elementary in Brandon, and I taught kindergarten and first grade.
And why did you get out of being a teacher?
It's kind of a loaded question. So I really struggled with the decision overall. It was not an easy transition to make, and I had considered leaving for about 2 years before actually making the transition out. Um, I struggled with what it would look like for me to stay in teaching for, 10, 20 years, and I knew that with what was going on in education that I would not be able to maintain a positive outlook in the classroom and give my students the best support that they deserved, with what was going on with administration in the district and the higher level. Even so, compensation was a large part of it, but there was other issues of politics behind education, and just the lack of support and autonomy factored into my decision overall. Through COVID, I think that a lot of things shifted and a lot of things became highlighted, especially for me. I realized that the lack of support that I was receiving through such a difficult time really resembled what education looked like. And so for me, I decided that I didn't want to be in a long-term career where I didn't get the support that I needed to do what was best for my students.
When
I really want to highlight the fact that many teachers feel similar when leaving, and that it is a very difficult decision. It's not just an overnight call to make. And especially those teachers that are leaving in the middle of the school year, they're doing it because they feel like they don't have any other option for their mental health. Because it does come down to being just a very toxic environment to be in.
Give me an example of, in your view, a lack of support and a toxic environment.
I would say a lack of professionalism, and it's simple things as far as not respecting time, scheduling meetings beyond contract hours, and requiring that you attend, or it's looked down upon, throwing last minute things on teachers' plates, and switching up expectations, and switching curriculum mid-year, things like that are taking time out of teachers' time to prepare for things. You could, have a meeting scheduled and people are showing up 30 minutes late simply because they're not respecting your time. So it's just, especially through COVID, I felt like I did not have the resources I needed to support my students, and the expectations were so high in a time when they really needed to be lowered.
Marlene, you wanted to say something?
I have a question for Leah, and I'm so glad you're here today. And I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot. A couple of things I've been hearing from teachers, specifically to Hillsborough. I know that Hillsborough has really tried to ramp up its literacy instruction. So they've introduced a lot of different approaches, curriculum, computer products to teach kids how to read. And what I'm hearing from teachers is they're being bombarded with new instructives and directives. was that part of it? Were you being bombarded with, change this and start doing that?
Absolutely. And I think that it's okay to do that. I think it's okay to be innovative and to change things as needed, especially with the way that things are growing and changing overall. And students' needs will change, continuously. So I think it's okay to do that. But then to not support your teachers through those transitions and to not provide the resources that are required in order to learn that curriculum or to spend the time diving into it so that it does support students in the best way possible. Because if you're throwing curriculum at me and expecting me to learn it overnight and then to teach it to my students effectively and efficiently, it's not going to happen. You have to support me through that and have realistic expectations.
Thank you. Yeah. The other thing I keep hearing, and this was reflected in a survey that I wrote about yesterday in Pinellas County, student behavior, that it's just off the rails, that after COVID, students came back and they had no idea how to act, and teachers were not supported when they tried to maintain an orderly classroom. I know you're coming from the elementary school, but have you seen that type of thing?
Yes, it's at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. I mean, I still have plenty of friends that are still in the classroom, and I'm hearing stories that are exactly the types of things that I also dealt with. Classroom management is a large part of your success in the classroom, but even with amazing classroom management, there are situations that teachers are being faced with that have never been in years past. Things that have never been issues before are now issues, and there's so much lack of support for those teachers who are dealing with those issues.
It sounds, Leah, like an extreme case of isolation led to this decision in a time when we got most isolated as human beings. And I'm a parent. I have kids in school, and we all as parents want to say, oh, we have to love our teachers, we have to support our teachers. Did you get that support from parents?
I think I was in a unique situation for a couple reasons. I had the opportunity to loop with my class, and so because of that, I had already built relationships with my parents and my students. So the last couple of years, I mean, that was one experience that I had, so that didn't factor in too much. And then my last year teaching, majority of my class was actually teacher students, so my coworkers whose kids were in my class, and because of that, I had really great relationships with them. So that was a huge factor for me. But I do know that there are many teachers that struggle with parent-teacher relationships and lack of support from parents.
Marlene, real quick, how are you on time?
You know what? I just told my coworkers that I'm going to be late to their meeting.
Okay. Okay.
This is fun.
All right. We're going to restart the interview here. I want to get into an area where I don't want to offend people on purpose.
Lots of luck.
But reading some of the reporting that you've done, Marlene, in some of these struggling schools, the percentage of kids that come in totally unprepared for school is amazing. It's depressing. It's ridiculous. And I don't want to be one of those people, I'm almost 60, and I don't want to talk about the good old days when things were better. But this is what I want to bring up. I grew up in rural Wisconsin. I lived out in the country. Almost all of my neighbors were dairy farmers. A lot of them had a bunch of kids, and we all rode a school bus into a little dairy town. I went to a K through 12 school. Each grade school classroom had 30 kids in it. There was never a problem with the students disrespecting the teacher. Almost all of the kids came from two-parent families where the mom and dad were at home all day because the dad was working on the dairy farm. They taught their kids to respect their elders and their teachers, and there just wasn't a discipline problem. The teachers could do their job and teach the kids. Today, we've got at least 40% of kids born to a single parent. In some neighborhoods, it's more like 80%. What in God's name do we expect our schools to do when we've got so much dysfunction in our homes and overwhelmed, usually single mothers trying to raise kids by themselves? We've got several generations of this happening. They have no idea sometimes they're supposed to be teaching their kids discipline, respect. They should know their numbers and letters and basically how to at least begin reading when they get to school. What do we expect our teachers to do? What do we expect our schools to do?
Well, if I could push back on some of what you're saying, and I love your candor, I love your honesty. I think to blame it on the fact that single people are raising children, I don't buy into that, because to expect a woman to stay in a bad marriage, because kids are better off with two parents, I would never agree to that. And I'll tell you from my own experience, and with the school that my children went to, most of the parents were single working mothers, and it was a great school. So I don't think you can isolate that as the problem. Yes, I will agree that a lot of the problem comes from students coming in and from a background of instability, from a background of trauma, from a background of parents maybe too overly stressed, just trying to get through the day, to teach them to read to them when they're 2 years old or when they're 1 year old. So I agree that children coming in without preschool, children who were not spoken to as babies, children who were not read to as toddlers, yes, they are at a disadvantage. I don't think it's right to say, well, it's because mom and dad aren't together. Those are not the times we live in anymore. That's not the society we live in anymore. It's nice when mom and dad are together. That doesn't always happen. I think the point, though, and the point of the work that I did and that we've been doing at the Times, is we expect our schools to figure it out. Okay, so if you have a school that draws from a very large poverty community, figure it out, give the students what they need, give the teachers what they need, so that they will level the playing field, teach kids what they need to know to succeed in school. And when schools fall short of that, I think we have to report it and hold them accountable.
Well, sure. I agree with that. Yeah.
I know I went off on a tear there, but I've known so many single working mothers who did an amazing job, and their kids are now working professionals and doctors.
I don't want anyone to think that I'm criticizing these people who are doing the best that they can to raise children. I have compassion for those people. I absolutely do. I'm not blaming anyone.
Okay.
But we have a breakdown of the family unit, either through people never being married at all, or getting divorced, or they can't get along, or whatever it is. But we've got a big problem in society.
Yeah.
And I don't, honestly, I don't mean to be a cynic or a Debbie Downer, but until somehow, as human beings, we start caring more about each other, and we start caring enough about our children to try to have both parents involved in the equation and raising children and getting along. I'm just not so sure that schools can fix that problem. We can throw money at it, but in the end, if you've got these poor teachers who are coming into a school and the kids don't respect them, like you did a story about one person who quit, and I talked to that teacher. He didn't want to be on the show. He had like 10 and 11-year-olds coming in with cell phones, watching porn,
Yeah.
while they're in class and telling the teacher to F off when they asked, "Where are your books?" Okay? A kid doesn't, how does a young person get to that state where they're so disrespectful that they do that? And how is a teacher supposed to manage that?
Yeah. And I wish I knew the answer. It's very easy to throw rocks like I did, and I don't have the solution.
Yeah.
I think to wait for us to become a society that's like Leave It to Beaver or Mayberry or something like that, that isn't going to happen. And in a lot of homes that these children come from, and many of them don't even have a home, they're sleeping on somebody else's sofa every night of the week. So even if they have a home, that stability is not there. I was thinking earlier today of a family that I got to know a few years ago. I did some work on a school called Booker T. Washington Elementary School. I got to know one family, the mother, and her life is an open book. I mean, she had been molested as a child. She was pregnant with her fourth child when I met her. Two of them were at Booker T. Washington, and then the toddler was not in school yet. She had been married twice, both times to men who were physically abusive to her. In fact, I was actually there one night when husband number two was arrested for beating her up.
Wow.
So this is a woman, she's got severe mental health problems. She's had a hard life. You can't even blame her. I mean,
Right.
these are the circumstances in which she grew up. Now she is on serial marriages with violent men, and she's raising 4 children by herself, and she's angry at the school. And there was a conflict between herself and the school. So I don't know who you blame. I don't think there is anybody to blame. I believe that nearly every parent out there loves their children and wants
Of
them
course.
to succeed.
Yeah.
Everybody loves their children. However, unfortunately, life happens to a lot of people. If life happens to them and then they have children,
All right.
the children come into the schools, and I don't know what the answer is when it's that dysfunctional.
With the issue with Hillsborough in particular, you know, I mentioned earlier that the budget issue is seems to be in all avenues of the problems that happen with the education system there. Do you believe that that's the main reason for a lot of of why we're seeing lack of resources, lack of support?
It is one factor, and what I tried to do without a lot of luck was isolate out, okay, why is Hillsborough so much worse? What makes them different? One thing that's different between Hillsborough and some of the other large school districts is they do not have a special property tax for the schools. You go over to Pinellas, you go to Orange County, Miami-Dade, they've got all these extra taxes to raise money for the schools. Hillsborough has a sales tax to pay for all those new air conditioners. They do not have a village tax yet. So that's a piece of funding that's missing. I don't know how significant a factor that is, and unfortunately, you can throw money at a problem. And we found a lot of money $75 million a year from federal money called Title I for the poor schools. $45 million over the last 3 years has gone into hardship pay for teachers at the Transformation Network schools. So we've identified tens of millions of dollars. Still doesn't solve the problem. So I think there are some issues that beyond money, issues about how are you drawing your boundaries, attendance boundaries for the schools. Do you have the best mix of students? You know, some of it's money and some of it has nothing to do with money.
All right. I think I've hogged a lot of the conversation here, but I want to give Leah Sarsfield a chance to kind of weigh in real quick.
Yes, I want to hear from Leah.
I have lots of thoughts. I think it's a difficult topic to discuss because there's varying opinions, but I think ultimately it was my job as a teacher and all teachers' jobs to create a safe space for students. And sometimes those students may only get a hug from you and may only see their parents, you know, at cater to all of those needs. And that emotional toll without additional resources or additional guidance in the schools makes it nearly impossible to also maintain your curriculum and all the other parts of teaching that are important too.
Yeah.
I think when you have a difficult student or you have a challenge in your classroom, you do the best you can, but ultimately if you have no support from your administration, or they just don't know which direction to go in because everyone's just surviving,
Yeah.
then it becomes just a big, like, no one knows what to do. And I think survival is like where everyone is at right now, especially with COVID. I think that's where our country is, let alone our district. But we have to factor that into the emotions of our children and families, that they are just surviving, in those single parents or those dual income parents. What doesn't matter the scenario, each child has their own difficulties that they're dealing with, and each family is just trying to survive, as well as the teachers. They're just trying to get through, just trying to do the best that they can. And I'm going to mention one more time that teachers that are leaving are not leaving because of the kids. They're not leaving because of parents. I mean, those are factors for sure, but it's the whole picture. It's all of the pieces that add up to just feel like there's nothing left that you can put into it anymore without giving up part of your personal life and feeling like your mental health is at risk, because it's just overbearing.
And Lee, after hearing you tell your story, I would say that leaving the kids and the parents was the hardest thing for you to do. It was what almost kept you back in.
It was extremely difficult. I spent a lot of time thinking about my decision, how I was going to navigate it, and ultimately I knew that I needed more. And it's not even just a mental place of teaching, but there's no growth opportunities in teaching. You can become an administrator or a guidance counselor, and both of those things require going back to school. Not that I was opposed to that, but that's not where I wanted to end up being. And so lack of growth and resources and support, compensation, and overall working environment and lack of professionalism drove me to my decision. I still struggle to this day about not being with the kids every single day and not being able to create fun lessons and engaging lessons, and to see the light bulb go off when.
Yeah.
It looks like we lost her.
All right. I think we've got 60 seconds left.
Yeah, about a minute and a half.
Fallon, I'm going to let you have the last word here if you want to say anything.
Oh boy, wow. No, after meeting with Leah too and everything, I think she does a really good job helping us all understand. Oh, she's back. There she is. But what I was saying, Leah, is, and you and I had talked about this too, when you're reconnected, you hear that a teacher quit. It's a big thing. The community's involved. Everyone's like, why would you quit? The kids. And for us looking in from the outside, we're not teachers, so it does kind of feel that way. Do you feel like teachers are held to a very high standard and high regard as far as their career in some aspects, of course? So I think understanding kind of the human side behind that too, and what you guys are really going through, it's a lot, and it's a lot to consider and take in, and I think you do a good job at helping us all understand.
All right, Fallon Silcox.
Where I cut off, but
We got about 30 seconds.
Hey, you know what? I'm just going to have to end things here because
I
we.
just want to say thank you, Lee.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, Leah Sarsfield, Marlene Sokol, and Fallon Silcox. Thank you so much for joining us on To the Point Already.
thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you all.
That was the longest one.
How long was it?
We've made the whole 40 minutes.
Well, it wasn't all recording.
No. Yeah, but we made about 30. It was probably going to be about 35 minutes long.
Yeah.
So
you ready?
Yeah, let's just do it. Yeah, let's see what I got to make sure the other audio looks good too. So let's go.
This is the Point Made section of To the Point Already, where Roy DeJesus and I are breaking down our thoughts on the podcast point by point. Roy, I know that I went on a rant during the show, and I'm not going to take back anything I said. But I want people to know that when I get all worked up into a dander and exercised, it's because we as adults have not gotten life figured out in some way. And these poor, helpless little children are getting left behind. Their needs are not being taken care of. Somehow, we're not getting the job done. I don't know what the answer is, but somehow as a society, we've got to get this figured out, and we've got to do a better job of loving and taking care of our kids.
We need to do a lot more listening, and listening like we did with Leah, you
Yeah.
know, because, you know, we have to hear what the problem is and find out what it is and figure out to see if we can fix it. Because, you know, in my opinion, it is the biggest problem we have.
Yes.
We have to fix the education issue if there is one. This is a huge red flag. Huge red flag. A teacher quitting their job and quitting because outside pressure, not because they don't like doing what they love, which is teaching these kids and having the support from parents, that's a problem. We need to fix it.